And so the question is, once the covenant comes into effect, can it be changed? You know, Paul addresses that point in Galatians. He says, "Brethren, I speak after the manner of men, though it be but a man's covenant, yet if it be confirmed, no man disannulleth or addeth thereto." In other words, what Paul is saying, if you ratify a covenant, if you confirm a covenant, even a man's covenant, once it's ratified or confirmed, nobody can add to it or take away from it. How much so God's covenant, when Jesus died to ratify and establish the new covenant, could that ever be changed or disannulled? Not at all. And this is a very significant point. Because God himself says, "My covenant will I not break, nor alter the thing that's gone out of my lips." And that's why when Jesus gave the commission to his disciples, remember, he just spent 3.5 years with them, teaching them about baptism, about the beautiful Beatitudes. He'd given them the Lord's Supper. And then he says, "Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you." He did not say, "Go back to Jerusalem, have a church council meeting and decide what day you want to go to church on." He did not say, "Have a church council meeting and decide what sort of baptism you want to have." He said simply, "Go out and teach the world all the things that I've already taught you." Because Jesus at the cross signed and sealed and ratified the new covenant, nothing could be added to it or taken away from it. In fact, that's why Jesus established the Lord's Supper, the memorial of his death, before he died. Remember the Lord's Supper, when he took the cup and the bread and he gave them as memorials of his death, and yet he hadn't even died at that point. Why did Jesus introduce the memorial for us to keep in the new covenant of his death before he had died? That's because when he died on the cross, that ceremony, if you like, the Lord's Supper, was ratified and signed and sealed as part of the new covenant. Because once he died and ratified the covenant, nothing could be added or taken away from it. He couldn't come back after he was resurrected, after he had died on the cross and then got resurrected, and say, "Okay guys, now I'm going to teach you a thing called the Lord's Supper, a memorial of my death," because it couldn't have been part of the new covenant. The new covenant had to be in place when Jesus died, because nothing could be added to it or taken away from it. And that's why he says, "Go therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you." Jesus had already taught what sort of baptism he wanted them to have, how to do the Lord's Supper, what day God wanted. When we come down to Isaiah, it talks about the earth being defiled under the inhabitants. This is a future prophecy talking about how the world is going to become desolate, and it gives the reasons why. Because they've transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant, therefore has the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Human beings have this amazing propensity to want to change what God has given them. That's why we see so many forms of baptisms, why we see people worshipping on a day that God never blessed. It's why we see so many forms of Christianity, because people have departed from the simplicity of the new covenant that Jesus taught during his ministry and ratified at his death. It's so simple. To understand what's in the new covenant, we simply have to go back and look what Jesus taught, nothing else. All these so-called Christian holy days like Easter and Christmas, Jesus never taught those. They're not part of the new covenant. There's so many trappings that we find in Christianity today that have nothing to do with Christianity, and they cannot be part of Christianity because Jesus didn't teach it and ratify it at Calvary. If it wasn't taught by Jesus and ratified at Calvary, it's not part of the new covenant. It's that simple. That's why Sunday observance is not part of the new covenant, because Sunday observance never came in until after the cross. Even if the disciples had kept that very first Sunday, the resurrection day, could it be part of the new covenant? No, because Jesus died and ratified the covenant 2 days before. Sunday was 3 days too late. It's that simple.